We are live. Good morning, everyone. Today is a treat. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. We're talking to a macro behavioral economic strategist, I guess you'd say, and a resource investor. He's well known in the space. His name is Nic Tartaglia. I've known Nic for quite some time here, for many years. And we're going to talk about kind of the framework of what he's done here with his book. It's a couple of years old, but this is the framework that he has. You can get it on Amazon as well. Reach out to me anytime. But this is a fascinating read, Millennial Economics, Structuring Economic Consciousness in Individuals. It is very important. I know some people might think, oh, well, what are you trying to get at here? Well, that's an entire framework for how we actually behave and work in reality, in our environment, not based off of utopia and models and whatnot, which are fine for economics and whatnot to understand behavior and whatnot and to theorize, but to look actually today at what framework we're using. And that's important for us too, because we're called the market mindset. We like to have a mindset, a model, a framework to build upon our own resource investing. This is a way to look at the entire behavior of people, both socially, economically, behaviorally. And it's truly fascinating read. I encourage you to get it. But we're going to frame this conversation in regards to Canada globally, the mineral resource glut, and I would say soft wars that are happening as people start to realize the critical need of resources. So, Nic, it's great to have you on. You're a great voice, and especially you have a strong following with a lot of the younger people growing up, and that's what we need to do. We need to reinform them of like basic critical understanding of how in reality the world works.
Correct. No, I agree with you. The issue today is people, they don't, whether you're looking at your life, your future, your investing, just the way you want to observe the world, people have the wrong frame and the wrong parameters around which they observe. So a lot of times their conclusions are wrong. How they theorize the future to play out is wrong. How they assume the financial markets are going to play out is wrong, because they're not allowing the data, which is human behavior, to dictate to them what is truly happening in the moment and where these behaviors are going to drive the financial markets, society, civilization, and the culture.
That culture, I mean, really, it is either something that helps to excel and catapult a civilization or a country or a nation forward, but it also could be the toxic soup that mires it down. And I mean, it's obvious, you read a lot of history. I've studied a lot of history. One can see it looking back very, very obviously and clearly with different ideologies, ones that have, without fail succeeded and ones that have failed. And that seems to be also a large glut or maybe misunderstanding as well, because people don't seem to have the frame of what has worked and what doesn't work in the past.
No, it's fascinating because you can literally go through history and observe the same cyclical patterns throughout time. If you take a long macro view and you say, okay, I'm trying to understand what can today be done. Let's say I take a government centralized point of view. It's like, okay, what do you think they're going to do in these cycle behaviors? Well, then it's like, okay, let's go back into time. What have civilizations done when the market of activity has been dying? Government tends to focus on spending. What type of spending do they do? What type of things do they use to distract the population? What type of behaviors you notice within the economy or within the population as these populations are nearing the end of their civilization or near the end of time? And you then can be like, okay, I can apply this throughout time. And I notice that whenever civilizations tend to boil and people tend to conflict, and you have this separation of collaboration, you focus more on primal behavior, you tend to have these same reoccurring behaviors where government expands their power, government intervention becomes a necessary component of the free market. I put free because it's no longer free at that point, but the free market can no longer do its own thing. So the government further intervenes. People start fighting more. External wars are become the focus. Games become the focus. Poverty, socioeconomic regression is absolutely observed. And then you overlap that, historical pattern with today, you're seeing it again. We have external conflict, resource war. People are more divided in the West than they've ever been, which is the real threat to the West. And then here we are that everything has to become government subsidizing government intervention in order to kind of resolve these fundamental problems that we have. So society is weak now, and you can see these in the beautiful series, guys. By the way, if ever you want to watch something, go on YouTube. It's a 10-part series called Mike Malone's Hidden Secrets of Money series. It is a fantastic series that I recommend everyone to watch if you want to start understanding a little bit more about economic cycles throughout history. This was done over about 15 years ago, and you can see that these patterns are repeatable over and over.
That's what's so fascinating, because we always think that we learn from our mistakes, or that we learn from history, and let's not forget this. But the problem is that if we actually look at our own brains and how we work in our own little microcosm, our brains are built to forget. That's the magic of it. If we just remembered everything, we wouldn't be able to function. So we are naturally, our brains are built to forget things, hold on to the harness, or like the major things, but really let go of things. That seems to happen on a macro scale just as much. They say it rhymes, it doesn't repeat. And for those that are interested in history, and I know whenever I was younger, people say, well, we should read history. I think that's so boring. It's already happened. It's not relevant. It is one of the most relevant things if you're looking at these macroeconomic themes. Like, once again, if you want to see how can I make history make money for me, if you nail down these macro themes and apply your portfolio in a strategic way, like us for the last 8 years, you would have been talking about precious metals and mining, and you'd be sitting in a very different spot than not as well, because these are themes we recognized, we saw that were just fundamentally there, despite a lot of the noise in the media. And I'm not saying it's just us. Our sector, this little microcosm, it understood what was happening.
Here, just to play off of that, like when being a young guy that got involved in a mining space, which was primarily dominated by the older generations, one of the way I kind of concluded the thesis was, well, I said to myself, the theme we were waiting for was government or electrification. So now the point I was at was where, okay, we don't have it currently. The sector is dead. You can't be more dead and unloved than you are now. It's a great opportunity to start buying cheap assets. And the issue becomes, when does the cycle kick back in? So that became the next big macro question you had to kind of contextualize. And the way I did that was saying, well, look, we're going to have an inflationary cycle. It's going to drive a lot of market activity. From that, you're going to then see the stagnating period in the economy, which is where we're at right now. And that stagnation in the economy is going to scare the crap out of the government, because we're at near zero interest rates, while you have socioeconomic regression, which means that we're at a point where no matter how much more liquidity you try to inject in the economy, the marketplace itself has no more competency or capability of going further, because it becomes so externally dependent on government intervention that now we're at a phase where the economy depends on further government intervention to create a boom or a GDP expansion again. And the only way the government's going to be able to do that, and if you look throughout history, is not by creating businesses. It's not by being these brilliant innovators. It's by doing what they've always done, focused on infrastructure and resources. And here we are going right back to the basic, because that's the only thing that they can do to get immediate results and immediate economic activity. And the only thing that we have differently compared to before is, before this was a continental game. You had one continent at a time kind of focused on resource expansion, infrastructure expansion. For the first time in human history, we have a convergence where every government in every continent is going to prioritize this, because if they don't, while they are in tune, like it's not like before where you didn't have access to data in real time. Every continent, every government, every citizen almost around the world is relatively connected to real-time feedback information. They see that other countries and other nations are racing after resources. If this resource expansion or infrastructure expansion wants to take place, these countries have to start making moves. And over the last year and going to 2026, we've been seeing this behavior expand, and it's going to only exponentially increase. And this is where, we've been talking, Andrew and Austin, about these issues, is Canada is behind. Even though we have access to so much of it, Canada still doesn't seem to give a fuck that there's a race going on and we need to get on point.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I've been talking about for years, was once I understood, like yourself, and we'll get into your kind of origin story too, because being younger, being interested in mining is tough. I know you got there from the economic understanding of supply and demand, and and resources. If you don't have resources, and energy, you don't have much to leverage off of. But when I saw that there was this major push on an energy transition, what that would look like, but then that there was no plan, I thought, well, this is interesting, which then led to looking at China and the incredible growth that they were having. I mean, it's shocking. I mean, some people will say it's a little scary because they look and go, look how fast they're building out. Most people have no clue, really, of a true sense of what they can do. But if you just detach and think, if you want to watch engineering feats that used to get done by the West, absolutely mind-boggling, growth, not only in, say, nuclear reactors, in bridges, in buildings, you name it, it's happening in China. It's not happening in the West. It's not because it can't or we don't have the ability. It's that, okay, what's the mechanism that is not allowing an actual plan moving forward? Because, for 10 years, we've heard about that there's going to be change, that there's going to be all these green solutions, but no actual plan as to, well, how are you going to get there? And that I always found that disconnect between, once again, a culture and an ideology regarding what the end utopian ideal is. Well, do you have the team in place that can pull that off? And two, what is the exact plan? How are you going to get those resources in order to build the solar panels, build out the generators, build out the hydro dams? Like, when is that going to happen?
Correct. To your point, it's funny because just recently we had Europe come back out and kind of take back their whole position on combustion engines and diesel engines. That's kind of why Palladium's been doing platinum or Palladium's. Which one is it in the combustion engine again?
Yeah, it's a platinum palladium group for sure. Yep.
So because their whole thing was we're going to eliminate it by 2030, and then just recently, after a couple of years of playing this game, over regulation, creating conflict in the market, they come back. Well, clearly it's not realistic. It can't happen. No shit, it couldn't have happened because you were led by ideology, not by freaking logic and objectivity of reality. Like these politicians and these people who are trying to dictate reality are so not in tune with reality that they're just going to cause conflict. It's not just the fact that in the real time they distort the market. It's the consequence of having then down the line having to undo these ripple effects and this domino effect of causing conflict, that the cost of having to fix what they've done is just substantially greater. And it's like, do we further dig a hole to try to offset what you guys have already done to us? And this is the game we're playing, where the mining sector is trying to wake up, but the government is still in this place with the culture where, well, we want to electrify, but we want to do it without mining. Well, how the hell are you going to do that?
Yes, you've touched on a number of issues, and I'd say in part because this underlying culture, which is led also by state-run education, that has been very strongly against anything extractive, which also is unique that you got here and you had interest in it. That is a culture that's hard to, I don't want to say re-educate, but re-inform. And they've dug themselves into a hole. I mean, metaphorically, and also be a cute little analogy. It's interesting what they have done. I remain hopeful, and we'll get into some more details, that you have someone arguably that one could hope in Carney that it has enough of a pragmatic side and of course an economic side and financial acumen to convince and pull off some actual projects in the next 2 or 3 years. I'm not making any predictions that that's his intent, that he even wants to do that, but he could do that.
Yeah, that's the issue we have, right? We have to be driven by this sense of hope that Canada, the land of rich ass resources, has to somehow have a political party that snaps out of it and goes, well, maybe we should tap into our resources. And in this environment where we're having global, economic regression and stagnation, where people are afraid of deflationary spiral, I think that the mining space is the only real safeguard to Canadian economy to kind of keep us away from that regression. But then we don't see it happening. And then to your point that we talked before we started this was, well, Chinese company just came in and decided to buy a Canadian asset, to the point where even Newmont delisted from our Canadian securities exchange, because they don't find there's any interest in the Canadian market or investment market to be listed in Canada. So they only list now in the United States. That the interest, this sector is, I think, the only real safeguard to Canadian economy. But we're not there.
No, the extractive industry is. I mean, and that is something that a more left-leaning ideology has to come to terms with, because even in their most basic understanding, they would argue that the world and the history of the world is an ugly fight for resources. And I would say, sure, I'll admit that. I'll agree to that. And then the utopian solution is, why can't we just get along and work together and share? I say, well, once again, that obviously disagree with that, because it just is irrational. It's never happened, never can happen. Just simply because if you walk around the streets enough and chat with enough people in your own neighborhood, you're going to find you're not going to get along with everyone. Now, amplify that to entire nations and countries that, once again, a big cultural problem is they don't think like you. They don't even have the same goals or interests or even ideology as you, and may strongly disagree. We unfortunately here, and my generation included, have grown up very safe and secure, with very little struggle, comparatively speaking, in history, with this weird kind of liberal understanding that everybody wants to be like us, which is completely false as well. And I was one of those in university growing up thinking, why wouldn't everyone want to be like us? It's not until you get out in the real world you realize, no, not everyone wants that. They just don't. And that is an underlying cultural phenomenon that people just don't seem to get. They just think, no, everyone wants to have this, whatever this is.
Correct. It's sad to see that they're stuck in this vacuum, and it's a consequence of the privilege, especially with my generation. We've been so disconnected from the difficulties of reality, how complex the system is, that here we are thinking that it's such a simple little snap of the fingers. We can give everybody everything they want across the globe, that every war is just gone, that you could bring back peace and tranquility and equality like it's nothing. The system is so fragile and complex and difficult. It's taken humanity 5,000 years just to kind of learn some of these lessons in only some parts of the world, that you think that all of a sudden we're going to go right back to this utopic reality that's never existed.
Yeah.
It's sad to see it, because it could be one of the destructive forces to our culture and to our economy, because we're fighting. Half of us is trying to produce, the other half is just trying to leech. And it's separating us, while these foreign nations who are all focused in one direction are nailing what they have to nail.
And that term is not incorrect, leech, because the entire NGO or activism sector literally is just another corporate job at this point. You can get paid very well to have that job, which if you thought like, what's your job? Well, I'm an activist. You go, okay, so what do you do? That's your sole job. That is a fairly new idea, and that is a very strongly embedded, especially in a progressive setting, because it keeps people employed, keeps them on track with the ideology. It gets, basically you've got your promotional arm out there working for you, and they're funded. They're very well funded. These things don't happen, by themselves. They have to be funded, and they're very well funded. And that issue between that person who's drawn to that, because yes, most people say, yes, there's problems in the world. There's no doubt. There's nothing wrong, with the basic foundation that there isn't equality. I'd argue there shouldn't be. I don't believe in inequality because we're just not equal. That's what makes life interesting and makes it diverse, is that we're not equal. When you get into the law, yes, we've had equality in law for decades. So, that argument falls apart quickly when you get into that nuanced conversation with them. But to go, those basic foundations of what we already have been thrown up in this weird discussion today that is tearing everything apart, because you've got one half or certainly a big large section saying we want to propel forward, and even to like an aspirational idea like saying Elon Musk, where it's like we're going to Mars. I think I've heard him say he doesn't actually think we're going to populate Mars, but that's the aspiration. This is it. It's his idea of like when you're pointing to the sun or something like that, is we're going to hit Mars and we're going to populate the universe. That's a very different aspirational approach than saying by 2030 no cars, or it has to be all green electric. They didn't provide a framework as to how you're going to get there. Do we have enough metals? Do we have enough minerals? Do we have enough mines? Do we have enough smelters? He's doing that. He's at least trying. Like, he's building out all of these things, and his track record, like him or dislike him, it's not relevant, is fantastic. And you get things done very quickly. That type of approach to life is very aspirational and hopeful, whereas the other one, it isn't conducive to opportunity, growth, and hope, to be honest.
To nature itself, like you said, right? You believe we are by natural law, we are unequal humans, because some are born taller, bigger, stronger. Some can see, some can't see. There's all these dynamics. Some are born into wealthy families, some are not. Some are born with parents who are exceptional, talented people that then transmit that knowledge to the kid that is early on. If you're a fantastic violinist making money, do I then cut your fingers off, or because we're unequal? If you're 6'5" playing in the NBA, do I then shorten your legs because now you're unequal, you're too tall compared to other NBA players? Like, this whole concept of equality can only be applied, like you said, from a standpoint of the law. Under the law, we are equal human beings. Beyond the law, we are naturally unequal. And that is the beauty of reality, is because we're so unequal, we can distribute our capabilities in different ways and produce these variations and these innovative fabrications of society that allows us to propel in so many different ways. If every human was the same, there'd be nothing incredible about humanity anymore. We'd be just sheep or zebras, running in the same direction as a herd.
Yes, absolutely. And that fundamental understanding of reality being so different, I mean, there you go. There's a cultural shift. There's a big chasm or gap to mend, if even possible. And in that is that idea that people generally understand that Canada is a resource country. We're very lucky, and we've got a wealth of all the minerals and metals and whatnot that could solve a lot of the problems that both sides want solved. Everybody wants less pollution, a cleaner society. No one, wants to be driving around in, say, a bunker fuel car. Regardless of narrative, everybody, and you work in mining, I work in mining. Every CEO wants a clean environment. They want to do things correctly. It isn't just green speak. It isn't. Most people don't understand or realize that that's true. There is a big, huge meeting on a lot of these ideas, but that's also not being promoted out there on a large scale, which is part of the issue and problem. But it's that understanding that it is tough, extractive industries. It's not pretty, but we need to do it, and we must do it with tight regulations and properly and cleanly. And the best place to do that is actually in a place like Canada, because we have tight laws, we have firm understanding. We would rather do it here, and since we have the assets that we can unearth, than have it done somewhere else, because it's getting done somewhere else anyway.
It's always been funny that liberals, or the ones who are so anti this industry, that they don't want to be leaders by example and say, you know what, if the rest of the world that's so focused, that has a lot of the mining operations already, let's say in Africa or in Asia or some places in Europe like Russia, if they are the bad examples, their conclusion is, well, we're not going to mine, and we're going to let those other countries keep being the major producers, and so the whole world is going to be supplied by them. So the worst actors are the best examples they have, rather than say, you know what, let's lead by example, let's open up our sector, let's innovate, let's invest, let's allow culture and society of people within Canada to influence a proper direction or a proper management of mining resources. And then by example, we become our own supplier without then having to depend on the bad actors. Even within their own reality, they can't conclude that maybe if we just did it domestically and we applied kind of this philosophy, we'd be still better off. Instead, we ban ourselves, but then we consume all the we import foreign produced material that is done in the worst way you'd want to be done. So even from their very from the way they behave is hypocritical. They say one thing, but everything else they do is show and demonstrate. They don't actually fundamentally care about the narrative that they're trying to spew into the marketplace.
And that's a very tough thing with people having, families, busy lives, and they go to a trusted source. And I also understand that a lot of people aren't, although have strong opinions, aren't terribly interested in a lot of things that say I would be, and they shouldn't be. Like, I don't have a lot of interest, say, in basketball, so I let those that have lots of interest focus in on it. And I'm sure if I felt like learning something, I would go ask someone who knows about that. But the difference is that it seems that people have very strong opinions now, although they haven't done any research, which is a very interesting thing. Or perhaps because of social media, we're just recognizing on a global scale that people have always had very strong opinions on things that they don't research. And we're seeing it very much in our face now. And that behavior or that admission of who we are is hard to see. Is that, we had spoken earlier, you could show someone data and graphs and stats and say, here's the truth about XYZ. Like, if you want solar panels, you need silver. You could show them that, have an hour-long conversation. They'd finally go, oh, okay. And like, listen, I admit it's dirty, it's mining, it's tough, but we want to do it here because we have a say in it, and we could keep an eye on it and make sure that we penalize things that are done wrong. They'd go, oh, that seems reasonable. You could get them to that point. And then literally the next day, maybe they watch some late night TV show and they're back to saying, no, we can't do any of this.
No, we're definitely in a dichotomy right now. And this is the pinnacle point for Canada, where it's either we step beyond that opposing force and we can actually get into tapping our resources, or else Canada is going to miss this train and there is no way we're catching back on this. And this is why, like, from an investment standpoint, the American economy or the American mining names are really interesting to me, because there's a clear direct mandate from the administration to move this forward for domestic purposes, from an investment standpoint, for economic activity, for security reasons. USA is on that. They get it.
Yes.
Canada does not. So that's why, like, lately, when I sold a lot of some of my names that I've done really well with, my focus was, okay, where can I refocus on American names? Because I think they're gonna deserve a premium soon.
Certainly, anybody who even is, say, if it's a Canadian exploration company, if they're looking at assets in areas that maybe they can get things actually done. Right. I use Barrick as an example.
Might be an interesting one too now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Like Barrick selling out all of their Canadian assets and saying, you know what, we're going to go in with the Export Bank of the U.S. for billions of dollars on our Reko Diq project in Pakistan. That was with Qatar. That was a big eye opener to me, to say, we believe that even in a very politically challenging area, they feel more comfortable than attempting to get a permit in North America and to actually get extraction. And that is hard to say because, there's lots of Nevada mines, there's lots of Canadian mines, but we all know it's about 17 years to get, from a discovery to production, which, would horrify most people when they think, can we just get into mining now? You go, well, we can. We should have 8 years ago, but we're starting at such a further point back. If you want to talk about equality, China has been leapfrogging far ahead in this resource battle. For us to even unlock the value we have is going to take aspirations and once again a culture of unity to say, and I don't mind if it's elbows up or whatever it is, whatever ideology you need. If we want to have a successful, wealthy, energy-based country, we have to unlock that, and that means a lot of drive, a lot of smart people, a lot of ambition, and a lot of constraints of too much safety, like, oh, we shouldn't do this, it's not safe. That has to be peeled back a lot.
Correct. No, I agree entirely. It really does have to be done that way. And I think it's also up to well, I mean, we're not going to say it's the Liberal Party or the Liberal candidates or people that are going to kind of push this forward. So now it's really detriment that the Conservative or the right wing or the Libertarians of Canada kind of come forward and try to push this forward, because this is the last straw they have to kind of leverage, especially Conservatives who are so, like, they want to be back to energy and all these things. But it's funny because even in that party itself, most of them don't realize the solution that the mining ecosystem provides for the Canadian economy.
Well, I mean, arguably, I mean, Carney is the type of person who could do it. He could pull it off. He obviously
You're
understands
not wrong.
because,
That's
yeah,
true. Compared to
I mean,
Trudeau, I would definitely argue Carney is more capable.
yeah, I would argue, yeah, that Justin had no interest, and that's why he was there. He was there on purpose to stall out for 10 years. But Carney, I mean, Brookfield invests in oil and gas, so that he's very comfortable with it. It's the big question was always, well, why can't Canada? Like, if you actually wanted to decrease global emissions of CO2, you'd be selling natural gas to all the countries using coal. That would be the biggest impact on the planet, would have just been that. And that takes how many WF and UN councils would you have to sit on to just go, boom, you would have hit incredible numbers simply by doing that. But that was never on the table, which is, once again, interesting. You can make your own conclusions as to why we didn't, why not. But once again, you get into culture, permitting, policy, and ideology.
No, it's just to unravel the uphill battle that the mining sector has in Canada is in itself a battle. Just to unpeel that all those regulations and all those things that make it a 15 to 20-year process to build a mine. When no, some of these assets, give them 5 years, they can go into production. If you can unpeel and let them go, like, let them push forward. The beauty of, it's like in America, there's some properties where there's no need for permitting, there's no need for, like, they don't have to go to the government. They can just, as long as they can prove their asset, they can do all the necessary tests, build their feasibility, the MER, and so on and so on. They can go straight into mining and producing an asset. Canada, everywhere you go, you have to deal with the provincial and the federal government at every level. And then if you have local people, you got to deal with, there's just so much barriers in Canada.
Yes.
And as an investor, and someone who also lives in Canada, I want this sector to boom in Canada because I want to see people around me get wealthier. I want to get wealthier in this country, So,
well, the irony is that the actual government, even if they want to implement change, is also funding the barriers itself. They fund the NGOs, they fund the parties, the counter, and they fund the education to stop it. So it's ironic, and I would argue that if one is hopeful in that, say, Carney does have this, he obviously has the intelligence and skills to be able to pull it off. He could turn around Canada so quickly, and the argument from people older than me would be, look at his resume. I'd say yes, he absolutely is capable, and he could. Whether he does or not is left to be seen, but he definitely could, and I'll give him that. And that's my one hope, is that perhaps he understands, he recognizes, but he sees also what we see, in that there's been a culture for at least 2 decades of anti-extraction, of not resource. Canada used to be the big junior market in resource. Individuals invested. Now, of course, it was the wild, wild west a bit, but we need to get back to that. We need that people say, well, I don't want it just to be a government project and state-run. Is that no, you want to take on some of that risk, because the upside is asymmetric. There is no upside if your country invests in it and builds a mine. You're not getting anything out of that. It will slightly improve your life. You want to be able to say, listen, I want to get on this train of being part of the solution, and that means getting into this R&D, into these mines. And when you see that open up, and especially if you see something at a higher level where, say, pension funds in Canada are actually interested in investing in Canada, which would be novel, that would be a big highlight or a big signal saying, yes, we're actually interested in growth here in Canada, not only in real GDP, but productivity and creating jobs, and creating this backbone structure that perhaps a lot of these battery companies would have stayed and built out their batteries.
It's funny you talked about the pensions getting involved. I just recently read how, just to show you how the direction of these bureaucrats is so misplaced. They're talking about how pension funds in Canada should be utilized to invest in affordability, or for creating affordability housing in Canada. Yeah. It's about keeping afloat what doesn't work, rather than prioritizing capital where things can really fundamentally provide economic development in Canada. We are so misdirected in what's actually important in this economy. It's so incredible to watch Canada do everything that it should not be doing.
It is shock. It is wild to see. And I mean, it's the same as you could pick on Germany. They were shutting down all their nuclear.
France too.
Yeah, and it's like, what are you doing? This is, if you're interested in science and you're interested in research, it is the cleanest and safest. Why are you shutting those? It makes no sense, especially you're a Green Party. But once again, this is the obstacles we face, and that's why I wanted you on, because you represent a younger generation that you woke up to it, and that's important, and that you're helping to teach and reteach the younger generation to say, listen, this is reality. This is what we've got here in Canada. We all have common sense that we want to do things like fairly and encourage our neighbors and our friends and make people around us wealthy, and to do it cleanly and not to pollute. I mean, these are given things that we already have innately built into us over decades living in the West and in Canada. But that we know that there's risk, we know that it's a dirty business, but that we can apply technology, and if we're funded properly, which would be nice. Once again, pension funds, hey, hello, Brookfield, hey, we'll welcome, come on into Canada, maybe invest into Canada, since the chairman of Brookfield now runs the country. It's a lot of that is just interesting to see, and we are finally seeing, and it took a down south movement of saying, almost like a manifest destiny. We're going out. We're going to become a leader again. We're going to make things happen. It's then forcing a light into Canada and Europe, which they don't like, to say, hey, listen, maybe you have to solve these problems on your own instead of just talking about them.
Correct. People don't. The beauty of it, well, the irony of this mistake that the governments have pulled and the culture has created was that, as a young guy, it allowed me to get into the sector and start spending time actually heavily allocating capital over the last couple of years. So their loss was my opportunity. And that's, as a mining investor, you couldn't ask for, or as an investor in general, you could not ask for a slower sector where you never felt pressure to invest, because you had time to make decisions and be in tune and see how the market was developing, because there was no other pressure to the sector. So from an investment standpoint, as a contrarian investor, this was fantastic. I am so happy that I landed on this thesis, that I realized this, and that I've had years to really allocate a lot of capital. And now we're starting to see the market really wake up. It doesn't mean the opportunity still doesn't exist. There is still a crazy opportunity in this sector. These evaluations, even the ones that have ran up 500%, are still freaking cheap relative to where the sector can go. So the opportunity is incredible, and I'm so happy that I can see the sector go up and be a part of it. And I hope a lot of other Canadians can take advantage of this opportunity and make a ton of money as well in the sector, because there is going to be a lot of money to be made in it.
I mean, you're a great advocate for this too, because you are so close to the generation that's involved in crypto and Bitcoin and that. So they have that firm understanding of money printing, the obvious kind of like, wait, this doesn't make sense realization. They were less interested in gold or money, because I asked for old people, but they're starting to wake up, and they're starting to wake up to that really. Even if you just want to do crypto, you need to have copper and you need to build out, electric grids. That the underlying onion, if you peel it back, of crypto is, do we have the metal? And you start to realize, no, there's a supply and demand gap. It takes a long time to build these mines. Not that you couldn't do them faster, you absolutely can. But what are those impediments? And once again, it's not like overnight we're going to be able to change things, but you can slowly, and that builds momentum. And once again, you'd mentioned this sector, for it being the backbone, like whether it's oil and gas or anything extractive, is tiny compared to the rest of the overall markets, but it's the only engine we have. You don't get any other solution unless you have that. And we're blessed in Canada to have incredible amounts of resources to lean on. And I've always thought it interesting too, is that culturally, Canada and Australia are very similar. Mm-hmm. Where it's different though, is that they're okay with extraction. And they've got very healthy mining there. They have, of course, advocates that are against it, but in comparison to Canada, night and day. So you go, well, that's interesting. We're very similar people. We have very similar values. We get along just great. And that highlights again, well, why can't we be like that?
It's interesting. People don't realize this. Well, let's continue the conversation with that. Australia has had to depend a lot on the Asia to kind of vitalize their economy, and a lot of that came through mining. But here in Canada, we just had to leech off of the United States' economic development. So as they developed, we just developed our economy to be designed accordingly to whatever they were building out as an infrastructure. So our economy is a byproduct of what they needed. Hence why 75% of our exports go to them. We just shaped and evolved based on whatever they needed. Australia, similar pattern, except mining was a necessary component for their economy to really prosper and grow. And China was a key demand for their economy, and they grew and really leveraged that opportunity.
Sorry, guys. I think Andrew got
Yeah, no stress.
knocked off there, Nick. I
just
apologize
noticed
for
that.
that.
Yeah,
Something might have happened with his internet or something.
It's okay. We'll wait for it.
Yeah, we'll give him a second here. I'll let you continue that point there, Nick. You were on a good roll, so we'll give you the platform here to just run with it, and we'll see if Andrew's able to pop back in the next minute or so.
Yeah, so that's it. Like you see how some economies have been shaped and evolved based on their partners, and because Canada is so kind of outsourced what they need to build to innovate by being a main producer only for what USA depended on, we didn't have to do anything else. Same thing like Australia. Their economy and their culture kind of got leveraged for that. Oh,
there we go.
Sorry, I'm back.
No stress. For a second, I was scared. I thought it was going to be me. I was like, oh, no.
Yes. No. I lost entire internet connection there. I apologize. Sorry, Nick.
No stress.
Go on.
Well, I'll bring it back to when you disconnected. So basically what I was going back to is one of the opportunities is sometimes some economies, they develop by seeing what external nations need and they kind of produce accordingly. Canada developed their economy to become a producer for the demand of the United States. Hence why you can see 75% of all of our exports go to the United States. Our economy was shaped and evolved to supply America. Australia is very close to Asia. Their economy was developed to supply the demand for Asia. Asia had a very hungry appetite for commodities and resources. And Australia was a great place for that, especially in the gold standpoint. Asia loves gold, they love coal, they love all the materials. Australia's provided a ton of it. Their economy grew to realize that mining is a critical component that has been leveraged in order to grow and supply the demand, the requirements of Asia. Canada, I guess, just didn't have that need because USA has been dependent on every other country like China and South Africa and Russia, that Canada was never necessary. And that kind of put us at the back of the wheelhouse or the back of the classroom when now it's time for us to kind of put the gear or press on the pedal and go, no, we need our resources now because there's a lot of money to be made from it. So
yes, and there is a ton of brain power. I mean, I look back to say like Waterloo, whether it's in the tech space, tons of engineering students. We have a lot of bright young people that are kind of left going, what's next? The opportunity for us, if we had that culture of saying we can do, we're a can-do country, we can get things done, we can develop these assets, and guess what? If you don't want to partner with China or you don't want to partner with US, that's fine. You have the material. You can self-fund. Your pension fund does invest in Canada already. It can fund a lot of this brain power that's coming up. You can create the options. And that's, I think, the hopeful message that we can leave with people is that it's all there. And we can do it. We have lots of smart people. We've got lots of capital markets experience. What it really is a policy. It's a social and cultural framework and a permitting issue. If the both sides came together and said, listen, we can disagree about all sorts of different stuff. The role of the family, this and that, that's fine. But what we need to all agree on is that we should be a strong country that takes proper care of its own people and provides opportunity. And we can do it by this. And it's not rocket science. It really isn't. It's very simple to do. And once again, you have a commander-in-chief right now that on paper 100% has the connections, the intelligence, the ability, could pull it off. It's once again, the big hope is, will that narrative come?
Correct. People forget in mining and commodities, they're the building blocks of civilization. So every dream we want, no matter what type of innovation you can imagine, mining will have to be side by side with it, because without those materials, without those commodities, we can't produce anything, we can't build anything, we can't innovate. It's literally it's like we say, atoms are the building blocks of life and all these moleculars. Well, when it comes to building and human civilization, mining and commodities, that is the building block of our reality. So we need to go back to our roots. We need to understand. We need a big educational push, and this is why this has kind of become my objective. And I'm trying to build a network of young guys and really try to be at the center of that objective, because I think that it is a gateway for our economy to be prosperous. And it brings us back to our roots, makes us understand. I think that without understanding this, we will never truly understand how to progress as a civilization, because we forget our roots. We forget the foundations to everything we're doing.
Our foundation is not strong. And I think that's what's so interesting in the analogy between understanding culturally, we're on uneasy ground because there's great divide in the country, both in how we see and view the world, but also economically, in that people just assumed, I think for too long, we have all the building blocks. They're there. And it's boring. Like, who wants to talk about mining? I mean, I like it, but I also like watching rowing. I mean, most people don't. So I know that most people aren't that interested, and nor should they. But we have to remind people, sometimes you have to take a big step back before you take any steps forward and go, do we have a strong foundation? Like, do we have all this metal and all this energy? Do we have it? And you say, no, we don't. And that is starting to realize upon people that, wait a second, even if I don't want the robots, and I don't want the AI data centers, just for growth, with copper, with any solution, whether it be solar panels, whether it be hydro, whether it be batteries, the amount of metal we need is shockingly large. And there's no reason why we can't be doing it in Canada if we want to stay totally self-sustained and say, hey, elbows up, we want to choose our partners. And once again, people can argue about that, but we need to all get on side with, well, let's build that foundation first. We can then go from a strength, a place of strength when we have that foundation and say, we have all these projects coming online with copper, with nickel, with whatnot. And not only that, is that we'll meet world standards, we'll remove a lot of the barriers, and we can get there a lot faster. And that, for someone like yourself, who's educating the younger people, becomes hopeful. They can start to see, well, wait a second, that leads on to the desire to fund more battery studies, more battery plants, more innovation, more technology. It has that rippling effect once you have that core foundation built and it's strong. Correct.
There's I like to compare such as for the younger guys. I go, how do you think Norway was able to create such a social safety net? They had their wealth fund is based on energy, that they're supplying the world's energy demand. Such a small population was able to leverage so much resource and make so much money that they have such a strong safety net, which, by the way, as a libertarian, as someone that despises government intervention and welfarism, like I would rather you play that as an argument than most of the other things we're trying to do in our economy that's so government intervention and welfarism. That would rather the government create a wealth fund where these mining companies, they pay a one royalty fee. This was the Gentile's idea, which tied into kind of what I used to talk about with Norway. You collect a 1% royalty from these mines and you feed it into this wealth fund, and do that and eliminate a ton of the other garbage in our society with all these regulations. I think Canada alone would be way better off just from that than so much of the other nonsensical ideas they have with how to revitalize the economy. It's such a simple thing. It's worked really well with Norway. I would rather us focus on that. The pension funds, invest in something that the world wants. The world wants it now. We have the opportunity to do it. We have the environment. We have a lot of technical capabilities here. We just need to open up the door and say, and let people attack the issue.
And you're seeing other people, once again, I mean, there's a deal today. Glencore has been in the news, I think, back to back, because they said no to $1 billion investment in a smelter at Horn in Quebec, which is extremely disappointing. That, like, not only do we need to mine, we need the smelters. Like, we need to be actually producing and crushing and making the end use product of a lot of these mining products as well. But on top of that, they've also sold 40% of their stake in Congo to a U.S. consortium, which again comes back to, well, very interesting. The U.S. is recognizing that they can go mine elsewhere, so they don't have to deal with the obstacles that the West faces and get the metals that they want. I would argue that if whatever ideology you have, like, the metal is going to be it's going to be found and it's going to be dug up. So if you're concerned about the environment, you want to have a say in that. You want it to happen where you can oversee it and do it properly. It's going to come out. And if it isn't Canada doing it and it isn't the US doing it, it already is China doing it. So this idea that it's not going to happen because we just put our head in the sand is, once again, it's a naivety that people need to wake up. And it's so vital and important that we have someone like yourself to remind people that our foundation isn't strong. A lot of things we took for granted, once again, just turn on energy. It's there. Where does it come from? Oh, the energy comes from the sun. I mean, I've heard all sorts of crazy things living out in Vancouver as to where energy comes from. And once again, I don't expect people to be that interested in economic policy or where energy comes from. But those driving the message have to be on side. Otherwise, we are in big trouble. And I think we're sitting on that precipice of extreme wealth creation and huge growth and prosperity, or just not.
Correct. No, yeah, it really is that simple of a dichotomy. It's either we focus on this issue and we tackle it, and it'll create a lot of generational wealth, or we will be left behind. And the one opportunity we truly had to kind of evade whatever's coming at fundamentally for global economies, it will hit us.
Yeah. And I mean, once again, if you're unsure, I mean, we're going to post over the next couple of days, just say it's robots. And we can see that happening, automation with robots. I don't mean just the human ones running around, because those will be there, but the larger, like Optimus and all these kind of, centers, how much metal that's going to take. Or just this idea with this SpaceX, with XAI, they're doing a giant merger. It's 1.2 trillion or something like that. And they want to put data centers in space. Well, you know how much fuel and how much metal that's going to cost as well? It's incredible. And that's what we need to break down to, is that this future that you want to have, it is heavily curtailed, not by innovation or genius or ideas or ability. It's basically curtailed by energy, by the ability for us to produce the energy to be able to get any of these things done. And that is a big top level conversation between political parties that are fighting about these things. But if we can get the general population to say, listen, we acknowledge that we need to be mining, but we want to have oversight. Why can China be able to do it like in a fraction of the time, put up nuclear reactions in a fraction, but also meet world standards? How come they can do it? Like, are we just not able to? Of course we are.
People forget. This is, I want to speak more to the investment opportunity. I want to reinforce this again. The last cycle that happened in the late 2000s to early 2000s, the early 2010s, or at least the real mining sector. Like if you take from the 90s to the early 2010s, those commodity cycles were heavily driven by only one continent, Asia. Okay. This time we have, going back to what I was saying earlier when we were talking, this cycle is driven by every single continent and every single government. This commodity cycle is unlike any other there's been. We have far more money supply. That means a lot more money chasing very few goods. We have over a decade of no mining productivity with decaying reserves. And then you have the entire globe converging on this issue.
Yes.
It's a battle of resources that has already started, that has not been witnessed in I don't know how long. Not since I've been born, that's for sure.
And that's the opportunity right there. And it's asymmetric. And if you're young and you understand crypto, that's what you liked. You want asymmetric, huge upside. Imagine how small the mining market is and the tens and hundreds of billions that needs to flow in. You can imagine what that does to a market to try to get that money in there without blowing up, corporate structures. We already see it happening. All sorts of juniors getting 125 million from Department of Defense, 300 million from Department of Energy, grants or offtake deals. Like these aren't blowing up the capital sheets at all. These aren't equity positions. We're going to see a lot more of that. And that's a huge opportunity, because if you're into something and they get that capital inflow, that's a big push. And once again, we have to thank the US primarily. If for nothing else, regardless of how you feel about it, is that they're putting their foot on the floor saying, we're gonna actually make you keep to your word and try to get these metals and minerals if you want this future. Otherwise, we can't waste any more time chatting about things for 5, 6, 7 years about doing a paper on maybe we should do a study on how much metal we may need. Let's go get it. Let's go do it. And if the sooner we get that education of getting younger people saying, you know what, let's not be black-pilled anymore. Let's do this. Let's go. That can change a culture and an overall ethos of a country very quickly. And you're doing that.
I agree. And I think it needed, and myself alone will not be the solution. This is a push that needs a consortium of people of different brains from different industries coming together and pushing this narrative forward, because it's not a meaningless, empty narrative. It's a fundamental, prosperous narrative that leads to something much greater for this country than just some artificial means of making money and dirtying the country. This is a lifeline that we need to tap into.
And we have an opportunity. We could have autonomous, hydro dammed hydropower mines. I mean, I know of one that's the plan. We have a chance to highlight the technology that can be used. Once again, if we could just be properly funded, if we could get our pension fund and our country behind it, we could be a showcase to the rest of the world to show this can be done. And it's a dirty business, but it's as clean as possible. It's precision. We're using the right solutions. And that's something people can then feel like they can feel proud that, like, listen, these people are risk mitigating properly and dealing with a very complex, environment in mining. But we're doing it socially responsibly. We're doing it with the environment in mind. And that is a win for everyone. Like that gets everyone's ideology. So there's a place where we can all converge and meet. And unfortunately, we've got a lot. What sells right now is clickbait, drama, and not nuance and reason. And let's get together. But there is a huge meeting of the minds for all sides involved, and then we can scrap it out over the social stuff if we feel like it.
No, you're right, Dan. And this is the opportunity we have. And as an investor, I'm happy that I'm in this opportunity, and I hope others jump into it, because it will make them money, and they are not too late.
You're not. Once again, this is the earliest stages. And I know that people my age and a bit older who've been in the market before, they're a bit more tentative and they're a bit more nervous because they've seen so many false starts, and it's emotionally draining. And we've seen that just in the last 2 weeks. It was at VRIC, elation. Like absolutely, it was like ecstasy. It was utopia.
And then immediately, than anything else.
Yeah, like giant party. Everyone's smiling. I didn't know where I was. It seemed very strange that everyone was so happy. And then the sky was falling very quickly. Now, once again, gold and silver have popped back up and buoyed and stabilized. But you can see that, and that's not making fun of anyone or anything. It's just that it's been so many false starts and so many boom, boom, that it's traumatic for investors, because the people in this space know this. They understand this. It's not that it's an ideology. It's a fact. And they've been waiting for it. And I would argue, like you as well, is that there's fundamentally, and if this has to happen, it's already happening, whether you want to agree with it or not. But who has the ability to pull it off? Who has the team to pull it off? Canada does. We are known for mining. And then who wants to jump on board? I mean, you don't have to buy Bitcoin at $80,000. You can get some of these juniors for 20 cents. Like you can start making generational wealth when the mining sector goes. That I can say because it's historically accurate. You mentioned different runs before. Am I promising that's going to happen? No, but I would say fundamentally the acknowledgement, even at WEF and from the UN. I mean, in Davos they talked about mining. That I kind of joke, like I actually had to thumbs up that and go, hey, thank you. That they are talking about that there because there's that final recognition and understanding that we don't have that foundation built. We thought we did, but we don't. And we need to hurry up and get on it. And I really appreciate, Nic, all the hard work you do and what you're building and growing and helping people to educate, not only just to get the narrative across and understand behavioral economics, but that there's a huge opportunity here to create an amazing future for anyone who's young, and they don't have to be black-pilled at all.
No, correct. It's a double-edged sword in the sense that you can do some great for yourself in your pocket, and you can do some great for the Canadian economy and civilization.
Well, Nic, really appreciate having you on. Here's the book again. Tell us your Substack as well.
Yeah, so just go on. It's Macro Imperium Mind, the Substack.
Yeah, there we go.
I talk a lot about just my journey in investments. I write macro reports. investments that I've made, why I make them from the macro thesis. So if you really want to kind of follow the mining sector, the macro world, and you want to kind of get a behavioral lens to these dynamics, that's kind of how I focus my things.
And that's a great place to start as well, because my side, we get maybe a little bit too heavy into the drill sheet and all the boring nitty gritty. But if you want to get just to understand, once again, what we're talking about and that framework, because it can be daunting. I mean, you can look and go, wait a second, look at all these geology and 3D graphs and LiDAR and whatnot. It can seem intimidating to get involved in, but Nic's going to help you, walk you through it, get that strong economic foundation as to why it's important, and then branch out and start to quietly learn, because the opportunity is now, it's happening now. And there's a bright future for everyone if they put in a little bit of work right now. And guess what? And use AI to help you as well. It's there. It's an amazing tool to help you. Use Nic and some AI, and you'll be on your way. So, Nic, I'll leave the final comments with you. Once again, thank you so much for spending the hour with us. It's been a fantastic conversation. Let us know your final thoughts.
It was a pleasure, Austin, Andrew. Thank you for having me on. And guys, for those of you that are watching, especially if you're younger, just start with the top story. Look at the world around you, how it's behaving, what they're competing for, where they want to go, and then let that drive the narrative or the thesis for your investment opportunity. You don't need to understand the geology right now. If you don't understand that stuff, go out there, look for names that can help you dissect those variables and kind of point you in the right direction. All you need to kind of have in your lane or from your perspective is what is going around the world, what are they doing, and let that drive the thesis, because you don't have to question the narrative that governments want to spend on infrastructure, remilitarization, and development. All these things will require mining. That is all you need to know. From there, now you just need to go learn the more technical data when it comes to investing in mining. And you can avoid that by focusing on the big names, or you can go down that rabbit hole by following people like the interviews that the Market Mindset will have, like Rick Rule, like Lobo Tigre, Tabby Costa. There is a ton of people out there who can give you guidance. You just need to be reaffirmed by the global thesis that mining will be at the center of it. That's all you need to know. The rest of it, just go out there and find people that will give you good references. And it takes time to learn, but it's worth it.
Perfect. And make sure Nic will be there to help you along the way. We really appreciate it, Nic. All the best, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.